You sat there while they spoke, nodding until your head ached because you believed being gentle would keep them close. The apology dripped from their lips like poison sweetened with your need for harmony. You felt the shift, the moment your silence morphed into a vacuum they couldn't fill. In that instant, every acquiescence you made became ammunition against you, a ledger of your own disguised consent. You learned too late that kindness without backbone is a currency no one values. They didn't pause because they felt guilt. They paused because they knew you would endure. Your discomfort became their leverage. Your voice, muffled from years of self-imposed restraint, seeped into cracks in your own conviction. Imagine standing at the edge of a confrontation you've avoided for years, heart pounding, throat dry, mind racing for excuses. You want to back down, to maintain peace, to be the good one. But peace forged by suppression is an illusion. Underneath lies a storm, waiting to break with far more force than any brief clash. Your avoidance isn't grace. It's a wound festering in the dark. And yet here you are, believing that if you just endure a little longer, someday they'll see your worth. That if you just bite your tongue until your jaw bleeds, respect will grow like a long-delayed harvest. The paradox is cruel. The softer you become, the easier you break, and the deeper they'll cut. You've been trained by invisible masters. Guilt, fear, the craving for approval. These are the architects of your own collapse. Each time you swallowed your truth, you cemented the narrative that your value depended on their comfort. But comfort is fleeting. Power endures. Feel the weight of that betrayal. The betrayal by your own hope. Let it settle in your chest like a stone. Recognize how many doors you've left open, how many boundaries you've let dissolve. This isn't a plea for change. It's an unveiling. If you've ever wondered why you still feel hollow despite every concession, subscribe and in the comments, name the moment you stopped defending yourself and watched them rise in confidence. They watched your shoulders slump, waiting for you to carry the weight of their mistakes. When you didn't raise your voice, they assumed you had nothing to say. In the hollow of your silence, they built their empire of disregard. You felt your ribs tighten as each insult passed unchecked, because you convinced yourself that confrontation would shatter the fragile peace you craved. But peace built on your capitulation is nothing more than a trapdoor under your feet. Remember the last time you bit back a retort? You polished your lips against the taste of resentment and nodded like a trained soldier, all while your mind plotted every word you never spoke. That moment of restraint felt like victory, but in truth, it was the moment you handed them the map to your boundaries you would never again reclaim. Every swallowed objection echoed louder than any shout you might have unleashed. They tested you first with small slights, a dismissive glance, a careless remark, a flippant jab disguised as humor. Each time, you smiled and blamed your own sensitivity. You labeled your reaction overly dramatic, even as your chest tightened, as if your heart was being squeezed through a vice. They watched you shrink, and when they saw you kneel, they stood taller. Feel the coldness in that realization. It's not about them. It's about the gap you created between who you are and who you allowed yourself to be. You let the world script your part, and now you play the victim in scenes you never wrote. You think you avoided conflict, but the real conflict was the one you buried inside. You chose subservience over sovereignty. This is not a call to rage. It is a mirror held to the part of you that believes compromise is a virtue above all else. Virtue without strategy is self-destruction. Notice how every time you yielded, you practiced defeat. Notice how they celebrated your concessions as proof of your malleability. Their silence grew louder than your voice. In the hush of your compliance, they discovered a playground. They tested the boundaries until none remained. Now, They walk over you with the ease of someone crossing an empty field. You tell yourself it's out of love, out of tolerance, out of understanding. But love doesn't demand your erasure. Tolerance doesn't ask you to vanish. Understanding doesn't demand your oblivion. Recall the sting when you first saw it, the look of disappointment that followed your apology. They weren't disappointed because you hurt them. They were disappointed because you dared to believe you deserved better. Their disappointment was a warning. Stay small. And you folded again. Every time you stepped back, you taught them how to push forward. Listen to that quiet voice inside the one you've silenced so often. It thrums with the weight of your untold truths. It pulses with the power you've neglected. That voice isn't an emotional weakness. It's your dormant strength. You buried it beneath layers of "I'm sorry" and "it's fine." Phrases you uttered like mantras of your own subjugation. Now, feel your spine steel. Not in anger, but in recognition of your dormant authority. You won't lash out. You will simply stand. And when you do, they will notice. They have never before seen you unanchored from their control. They have never confronted the possibility that you could refuse. They've never met the version of you who doesn't ask permission to exist. This is the beginning of an unraveling they cannot anticipate. There will be no announcement, no heralded moment. You will speak less, but your words will carry weight. Your pauses will become statements. They will hear the absence of your approval echo in rooms you no longer occupy. In the vacuum of your absence, they'll feel themselves shrink. Yes, they will test you. They will circle, probing for the old cracks. They will dance on memory, recalling your past deference, hoping to draw you back into your cage. Stand firm. Let them dance alone in that empty space. You need only breathe each breath a declaration of your reclamation. They'll whisper that you're changed, that you're cold, that you're unrecognizable. Let them cling to their labels. They need the story of your weakness to avoid facing their own. You're not unrecognizable. You're finally visible to yourself. They smiled when you flinched. You saw the flicker of satisfaction in their eyes, a predator tasting fear. You told yourself it was just nerves, that you were overreacting. But there it was, the gleam that only surfaces when you realize you've found prey. That gleam was never about you. It was about their hunger, and you fed it. Think of every time you apologized first, even when the wound was branded on your skin by their careless words. You pressed your palm against your chest, felt the bruise bloom, and said, "I'm sorry," as if your pain were their mistake. You surrendered your grief so they wouldn't have to acknowledge their cruelty. In that sacrificial moment, you consecrated their dominion over you. Now, see the truth in the quiet between your heartbeats. You were lamplight for them in your own darkness, illuminating their path while your soul staggered blind. They walked forward, guided by your glow, never once turning to rekindle your dying spark. And you let them proceed, because you believed your purpose was to light their way. But light without direction fades. You discovered that illumination granted access, not gratitude. They passed through your vulnerability like a thief slipping through an open window, taking everything and leaving the frame empty. You stood by, watching your own door swing in the wind, because you thought offering entry was love. It was surrender. Feel your chest grow cold, as if your own blood is a warning. That coldness is not spite. It's the crystallization of your resolve. It is the clarity that arises when warmth has been weaponized against your core. You realize now that your warmth was not a gift. It was a tool they used to carve out their comfort, hollowing you until nothing remained but the echo of your kindness. Recall the weight of every unspoken question you carried. Why do they disregard my boundaries? Why does my restraint feel like consent? Why does my silence sound like permission? These questions sat in the corner of your mind, gathering dust because you refused to confront them. You were a steward of your own confusion, meticulously organizing your doubts so you could avoid the confrontation that might set you free. But here, now, is the first blade against that confusion: clarity. Clarity cuts deeper than any shouted accusation because it severs the lies you've told yourself. It unmasks each false premise. That kindness begets kindness. That yielding begets respect. That your fear of conflict is more painful than the conflict itself. All lies. Notice how each revelation is not a revelation from me, but a reminder from you to yourself. I'm simply the mirror holding up what you already know. And what you see is cold, but it's real. And so you steel yourself not in anger, but in precision. You decide no more apologies unearned, no more concessions unsanctioned, no more relinquishing your agency for the illusion of peace. This is not about retaliation. You will not lash out. You will instead reclaim your orbit. You will move without seeking permission, speak without waiting for invitation, exist without asking for affirmation. In that reclamation lies your power, not in the force of your actions, but in the refusal to be dictated by others' needs. They will try to bait you. They will cast old mistakes before you like lightning to provoke a reaction. They will want to see flames to confirm you can be provoked. Do not rise. The absence of your ignition will extinguish their urges. They thrive on sparks. You offer them only stillness. Feel the magnitude of your stillness. It is gravity, pulling everything toward equilibrium. They will feel themselves unbalanced, as if a swirling storm lost its eye. They will search for your tempest, but find only calm. That calm is louder than any roar you might muster, because it signifies that the storm has moved on without asking where it went. Let every echo of their disappointment wash over you. Their frustration is a testament to your emancipation. They thought they could script your reactions, but now the pages are blank. They thought they held the pen, but you've taken it back. You will not write their story. You will write your presence. In this silence, they will confront a question they can neither avoid nor answer. What happens when the nice one stops playing nice? They'll ask it in their heads, but they won't hear an answer. They'll only feel the shift in the air and absence of the old arrangements. That absence is your presence. They called your softness a weakness until you discovered its hidden edge. You felt the tremor in your hands when you realized that mercy unbalanced the merciless, but mercy weaponized at your discretion becomes a blade sharper than any anger. In that realization lies your true leverage, the ability to withhold the very thing they crave, the illusion of your compliance. Recall the last time they demanded a concession, expecting you to fold before the weight of their demands. Your chest tightened, your throat thickened with the words you would never utter. And then, in the silence, you felt the first pulse of power surge through your veins. The intoxicating awareness that you could choose not to yield. You didn't shout. You didn't clutch for victory. You simply stood unmoved and felt them falter. They needed a reaction. They thrived on your response, calculated each slight to provoke the cadence of your capitulation. But when you refused to dance to their rhythm, they stumbled. Their accusations rang hollow against your stillness. Their insults recoiled into the void you created. You understood then that silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. Imagine the scene. They press you with every accusation in their arsenal, listing your oversights, your forgotten promises, your past mistakes. You see the roll of their eyes, the rigid set of their jaw. They expect you to flinch, but your gaze remains unbroken. You let each word pass through you like wind through an open field, and in the emptiness they encounter for the first time, they lose their balance. Feel the weight of every unspoken word you carry. Each one is a token of authority parceled out at your own expense. Now, each token returns to you. Your silence reclaims them, stacking them at your feet until there is nothing left for them to trade. You no longer negotiate with their terms. You define the terms. In their confusion, they lash out with frenzied attempts to provoke, a careless insult, a barbed comment, a reminder of your past concessions. They test the limits of your stoicism, hoping for a crack, but your presence is a fortress, impenetrable, unmoving. You do not engage their assault. You observe it, catalogue it, and then you let it collapse upon itself. This isn't callousness, it's calibration. You are not the storm they expect. You are the still point at its center. And in that stillness, you hold the power to reshape every dynamic you ever tolerated. You realize that every history of disrespect was drafted in the margins of your own tolerance. Now, you draft the new narrative in bold strokes, omitting the concessions they took for granted and inserting the boundaries they never acknowledged. They'll whisper behind your back that you've grown distant, that you've become cold. Let them. Coldness is a slur lobbed by those who mistake emotion for weakness. You're not cold, you're controlled. You're not distant, you're deliberate. You're not withdrawing, you're redirecting the currents of their expectations, no longer their servant, but their measure. Feel how every interaction shifts beneath your feet. The small talk dries up. The passive-aggressive jabs lose their venom. The entreaties for your approval fade into awkward silence. They were accustomed to feeding on your approval, and now that you've withheld it, they starve in plain sight. You watch as they grapple for the patterns they once exploited. They search your expression for the old signals, the quick nod, the mumbled assent. But your face is a calm plane, unreadable and resolute. They realize too late that you were never theirs to command. You were always your own. Each day you sustain this unbending posture. You erode the foundations of their control. You do not need confrontation to assert your will. Your absence of deference is confrontation enough. You do not need their permission to exist. Your unflinching presence suffices. This is the architecture of unshakable power. Not the roar of indignation, but the whisper of self-possession. Every moment you stand without apology, you condition yourself to expect no less from the world. You become the arbiter of your own value, unchallenged, unwavering, distinctly beyond their reach. They thought they knew the contours of your will, the edges of your reserve, the limits of your silence, until you discovered that the hardest barrier to breach is the one you build from within. You felt the moment your resolve crystallized, like ice forming in the marrow of your bones. Irreversible, precise, indomitable. In that instant, every past concession vanished, as if erased by a single unspoken decree. No longer subject to their designs, you became the architect of your own field, unmarked, uncharted, and untouchable. Remember how the world told you that empathy is your greatest strength. They praised your softness, celebrated your capacity to absorb hurt for the sake of harmony. But empathy without discernment is a sieve. You poured your energy into others until there was nothing left to contain your own boundaries. You were an ocean without shores, and they sailed right through you, claiming every drop as tribute. Now you reclaim the tides. You measure your compassion with a scalpel, metering it out only where it serves your sovereignty. You no longer drown in the needs of the careless. You choose the waters you will enter. Their pleas for your mercy will echo into the void, unanswered because you have discovered that mercy is a privilege, not an obligation. They will accuse you of transformation, of having lost the person they once knew. Let them. Those were ghosts. You were never truly there. You only played their reflection, molding yourself to fit their desires, hoping the mask would become your face. But masks have weight, and soon you could no longer bear the burden of their projections. You cracked open the mask and let it shatter. What remains is neither their dream nor their nightmare. It is your truth, sharp and unadorned. Feel the absence of your old self, a hollow that no longer spreads panic in their hearts. They thrived on your desperation for connection, your panic at the thought of being forsaken. Now they feel the vacancy you've left behind, and in that vacancy, they tremble. Their world is a stage you used to occupy. Now that the actor is gone, they search the wings for any sign of your return. They hope for your collapse, but you have no intention of returning to that script. Think of every confrontation you never had, every boundary you never drew. Each one is a stair you skip in ascending to this vantage point. You look down at the scraps of your former deference apologies you never needed, promises you never meant, silences you never earned, and you feel no regret. Regret is for those who mistake mercy for meaning. You have found meaning in the absence of regret. They will whisper behind closed doors that you've become unreachable, that your silence is pain. But silence isn't pain, it's reclamation. It's the echo of your unspoken laws bouncing back at those who once wrote them for you. They will test you one last time, hoping to draw you into the spiral of reaction. They will unleash every slight, every memory of your past concessions, like hounds unleashed on a phantom. But you remain the calm at the center, unmoved by their chase. This is the apex of your transformation. Not a shout, not a clash, but the quiet supremacy of your own self-possession. You no longer wrestle with them for scraps of dignity, because you demand none from their hands. You hold your dignity where it belongs within you. Their accusations bounce off this armor of self-authority, leaving no mark, no echo, no purchase. In this silent dominion, you become a force they cannot predict. They try to calibrate their behavior, soften their jabs, feign contrition, manipulate with feigned remorse. But your indifference is a mirror that reveals their every tactic. They feel exposed, unstable, as if the ground beneath them has shifted. Your stillness is seismic, and it rearranges every relation you ever had. They may seek allies to coax you back into your old patterns. We miss the old you, they'll say, as if quasi-nostalgia were a weapon. You will reply with absolute neutrality. You miss nothing. You have moved beyond the circular prison of their demands. Your absence of longing is a statement more powerful than any declaration of war. It's a testament to your emancipation. And so this final stretch of the body arrives at its own crescendo, not in thunderous revolt, but in the unwavering presence of your silent authority. You have become the rule rather than the exception, the standard others must reckon with rather than the subject they bend to. They will learn to speak your name only when they can meet your gaze without flinching. Until then, your silence remains the harshest lesson you could ever teach. You have wandered through their labyrinth of expectation, mapping every turn they forced you down. You have felt the weight of their contempt, the sting of their derision, and the hunger of their need to keep you tethered. Now see the final truth. Power is not taken with force, but reclaimed in silence. Your yield was their dominion. Your refusal is your reclamation. In this stillness, you become the unspoken law. No plea will draw you back. No apology will earn more than a passing glance. Their voices will echo in empty rooms, reminders of a drama you've already written an ending for. You feel the distance settle between what was and what must remain unbridgeable, uncompromised, and wholly yours. Let the absence of your old self echo in their bones. They will learn to walk carefully in the ruins of your boundaries. They will speak of your transformation in whispers, as if naming you might summon you back. But you are already gone beyond their vocabulary, beyond their reach. You exist now in a space molded by your own unyielding presence. This is the closure you need. Not comfort, not reconciliation, but the power of your own silence turned weapon. You have no use for hope. You have discovered inevitability. You have no need for solace. You have become the solace. You have no desire for approval. You carry your own verdict. If this truth resonates, if your heart clarifies in the hush, subscribe and leave a comment. Declare the moment you stopped chasing approval and began owning your silence.